everybody for taking some time out of the day and coming to this. My dad and parents have lived in several retirement communities. I've been noticing, technology moves so fast. I grew up in the age of rotary dial phone. You sit there and say click, 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 click. Fortunately, when I was young, I was able to get more involved with computers, so I probably was a little ahead of some of you, but the technology is here to stay. It's in our refrigerators, it's in our cars, it's in our phones, it's everywhere. And a lot of it cannot be trusted, let's say, really, really trusted. And as you mentioned, my dad and my sister live here. What I'm going to try to cover is just some general topics. Tell you a little bit about what CISSP is, what the ISC squared organization is. It's a global organization. Then try to cover a little bit about how the net is trying to help people be safer using the internet. Companies are doing things, governments are doing things. We're not all out here stuck all by ourselves, okay? We play a role in it just because of the things that happen. Bad actors, it's a nice way of saying spies, threats, jerks, whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of people out there that abuse the internet, and they're after information mostly. And then try to go over some of the threat areas and what you can do or what we can do. There's only about 4 areas that a user can actually help themselves by doing certain things. And one of them is just a philosophy. And if you guys have any general questions, let me know. If somebody has a specific question that's relative to something going on with you, I'll stick around for a while this afternoon after that and try to answer those questions if I can. Let's see if this will work.
We have so many. This is a forward button. You've got so many.
I probably turned it off again.
No.
And computers.
They're fun. I make my living off of them. For sure. We'll try this together. What is a CISSP? It stands for a very long acronym which confuses everybody, but it's a Certified Information Systems Security Professional. It's a mouthful. It was formed by ISC Squared in 1994, and I had already been in the business about 7 or 8 years, and was so busy at the time I actually didn't go after this CISSP until COVID hit and I had all kinds of free time on my hands. So I said, what else am I going to go do? It is the gold standard globally for security. All the federal government employees that work at the NSA, NASA, and all those types of places, they're all housed and run by CISSPs. It's a global consortium, stands for that International Information System Security Certification Consortium. There's only 200,000 of us on the planet at the present time that have the certification. It is in almost every country except, China and Russia, where a lot of the bad actors come from. And then, why did I get involved in this? It really goes back a long way. My father was in the Air Force, and then when I was 12 years old, he got sent back to Texas A&M University and to get a data processing degree, which at the time, that's what computers were called. You process data, put in a lot of data, get out a bunch of big spreadsheets. When I was 13, Dad moved to Colorado, and I had a math professor for 2 years in high school. Taught us advanced math and computer programming. When first time I learned it, I guess I was probably about 14 when I started programming. My senior year, I won a science fair for what's called an encryption-decryption algorithm. So you take the English language, and let's say you do a letter shift, we'll replace every A with the 5th letter in the alphabet. And it went through and did that, and it would also try to code break at the same time. If somebody gave you an unknown one, that it would try to give you enough readable letters so you could figure out what it was. Then I was headed in college and I was looking for a university that had a computer science degree. Well, they didn't exist in 1977. So I looked for universities that had computers and were using them so I could get my hands on them. Went to University of Florida and became an industrial systems engineer because it's the only department that had computers. So it was kind of a pursuit of my own, but it's the only way I could find to get there. In '86, I worked for Martin Marietta, built weapon systems there for several years. In 1986, I moved to Orlando and started working for Martin Marietta at the time and later became Lockheed Martin. There I built a lot of weapon systems like the Ukraine war that's going on right now. You all hear about those Javelin missiles that are the anti-tanks. I brought that out of a black hole in probably 1992, 93. So I spent most of my life trying to fight bad guys. And one of the most effective ways to do it in today's world is to do it by protecting the internet, the computers, your credit cards, your telephones. All this stuff is vulnerable. And a lot of it has to do with how we're going to look at it. And then in '98, I went full-time in my own computer business and helped grow about, 10 or 12 different companies. Got one US patent out of the whole deal. And then I hid myself so well for 20 years that last year when the pandemic hit and I had to get back on the internet, I had to hire an attorney to prove that I existed on the internet. And that I'm really going, I had to pay an attorney. So the securities there, companies are really trying to improve those kind of things. And it can be a little cumbersome at times, but most of the time it's okay. See if there's any other points I wanted to make. And when I talk about a computer, don't forget, everything is a computer. Your cell phone is as powerful as some of the computers that my dad used to run in the 60s. And they would take up entire rooms like this. Why? I care very much about security and privacy, especially privacy. I don't like people spying on me, and I don't think anybody wants that. It's a bad side effect of exposure. So I turned into a protector. And in the 80s, back when there weren't many bugs, I'll show you about that in a minute. There weren't that many bugs back in the 80s, but I saw what was happening. I mean, Facebook's okay, as long as you use it all right, but you got to realize what you're dealing with, Make sure you got the right people involved. Make sure you're just not throwing stuff out there all the time. And then, next thing is to try to go over how the internet is trying to help.
You should have tried that.
I'll try this again in a minute. I pace around a lot anyway. Governments, what they're trying to do. There's a lot of regulations out there. There's 11 major regulations in the United States: Privacy Acts, Communications Act, Economic Espionage Act. There's just bunches of them. But what I wanted to highlight is what some of the larger companies are doing and larger countries are doing to help us. The only exception I can make to this whole thing is if you're talking nation state, which none of us have to deal with right now, but that's the Russian hackers. That's Russia going after our infrastructure, China going after our infrastructure, us going after Iran's nuclear infrastructure. The nations don't play by these rules. This only applies to us as people. GDPR, that is the European Union's privacy information, how you're allowed to own and control the information that you have out there on the internet. It gives the person firm control, and if the company violates it, the fines are enormous. You can tell when to destroy my information. If a company uses your information, they have to expire it in a certain amount of time. On the US side, you have what's called Privacy Shield. And in 2020, the USA and the European Union took these two so our companies don't have to register with the GDPR. If you're on America's Privacy Shield, you're in conjunction with the GDPR. So it allows global privacy to match. Patriot Act, or PCI-DSS, this is probably the most important one for most of us in the room. It's how companies are required to handle your charges, credit card transaction, internet this. You know, when you pull up a card, you only see the last 4 digits a lot of times. That's controlled by a regulation to try to keep the information hidden so it doesn't get to anybody else. What companies are doing? Companies over the last decade have had to face a rash of incidents that forced them to try to beef up their infrastructure. You know, I have disagreements. I like to have favorite companies. I like stuff like that. But the big ones, Microsoft and Google, have done tremendous amount of things to try to make stuff safer. They're genuinely working towards it. Security firms have grown out of sight. They're all over the place trying to help people. So everybody's trying to get their infrastructure safe so that we don't have to worry about it quite so much. But there are some things that we can do. Carriers, AT&T, all the big phone companies. Now, I've got spam warnings on my phone now. I don't know if anybody's seen those. They're trying to go after the robocallers. You know, so it's a genuine problem, and believe me, the companies care about it. They're trying to do something about it. And again, nation states don't count. That's a whole different ballgame. And in fact, in an ISC squared position, we have a high ethics code. And if you violate the ethics code, they'll bring you in front of the board and take your license away. Because in order to protect people, we have to learn the same things on how to attack. But you just can't, from a principle standpoint, do it. It makes you the bad guy at that point. Bad actors.
Try your clicker.
I'll try it. I'm walking out of your film hole. I went the wrong way. Hey. Bugs. Some fun facts about bugs. The term was really first coined in 1947. It was a U.S. Navy Mark II computer, and it was on September 9th in 1947. And the thing broke down. They went, and it was back in the days where you plug a tube in. Remember everybody, tube TVs? It turned out a roach had gotten under the tube and fried the circuit. That's where the term bug came from. In 1975, there was, the first bug was created. And nowadays we have terms like malware. And you've heard terms antivirus or virus. It's just deviations from that original issue. And it has more to do with the complex systems now versus those tube type systems that we used to have. When I started the business in 1980, there was only 10 bugs known in the entire world. And I did this, these numbers are rough illustrations, but what I'm trying to show you is how slow it has grown over time. And now, because of information and computers are everywhere, it's going through the roof. The Pentagon gets attacked 50,000 times a day. Okay, and they protect themselves. So there are ways to do that, especially when you're talking to government. Anybody ever heard of Moore's Law? Okay, Moore's Law states that, I can't remember whether it's every 4 or 8 years or whatever, but every so often, I think it was 4 years, the price of materials and computers, the cost of them goes in half, and the power doubles. Well, 5 years ago, they changed the definition. Now it's dropping by 2/3, and it's tripling every 4 years. So the power of our machines is getting better. You're increasing what we call the threat surface, because there's so much stuff out there. Bad actors, threat agents, old Western movies. The good guy usually wore the white hat, and the bad guy usually wore the black hat. Anybody ever recall the magazine, Mad Magazine? Okay, remember the little spy versus spy in there? The little guy in the white suit, the little guy in the black suit? Well, that's still happening. The spy goes after this, and you try to protect yourself. They try to get you in the end, then you try to protect yourself. I mean, 2 weeks ago, Google and Microsoft discovered that they had an exploit in their browser software. Took them 8 days to fix it, but the bug was real and it was known. So make sure you keep yourself up to date. You get an update, take the update. It's one of the best things you can do for yourself. Has anybody ever heard of the SolarWinds attack? You ever heard about that? SolarWinds is a Microsoft product. How the hackers got to it was they changed stuff that fed into Microsoft's system. It bugged them from 3 or 4 levels down what they call their supply chain. So I build a component, I ship it, they stick it in there, the bug's in the component. Okay, that hack hurt tons of people. Colonial Pipeline, right? Last couple of years. How they did that was, there's a little teeny device that runs the pumps. Those are not complex machines. They're real simple. It was so simple that the hackers could get to it. So they're having to beef up the infrastructure. And we're lucky we're not power companies, because they're going to continue to try to go after them. But the power companies in the industry are doing tremendous things to try to make it a safer place. If you talk about the types of bugs you have, 65% of the bugs that run around are malware. Malware generally is not destructive per se, it's irritating. It's like that, you look something up on Google and on your phone for 2 months, you get the same thing popping up because they've got you on some ad tracking program. 64% of them are ransomware, which is where they're trying to steal information and sell your own information back to you. And that is probably the #1 threat to our companies out there. So it's hard to protect, and believe it or not, a lot of time it happens from an insider. It's not always good, but that's why they have security checks and background checks, making sure people don't do this or don't do that. 47% is inside death. Somebody steals it because you fire the employee. They go steal or blank out a bunch of your records. So you have to be really safe in the corporate world on trying to help us all be safe. And then we talked about good guys and bad guys. The way the industry works now is we have teams. One's called a red team, one's called a blue team, and one's called the purple team. So they all work for the same company, but the red team tries to attack, the blue team tries to protect, and the purple team fixes everything, fixes it all for you. And government computers are definitely bad. But the message that's there is as computers grow, it's not going to grow either. I mean, this is not going to go away. But we're getting better and better at protecting it. There we go. What companies are trying to do? Oh, that's this one. There's a company out there, it's called OWASP, and it stands for Open Web Application Security Project. All of us in this industry, because there's a bunch of certifications out there. Microsoft's got them, Google's got them, and the router, Cisco guys, they got them, all those kind of things. We all put input into this every year. And since 2017, these are the top 10 that we used to fight. It helps us focus on targeting the right defense. This year in 2021, that's what it looks like. Things have switched around slightly. SQL injection, that's what injection means. It's a programming thing where you can fake the other system out on the other end. Broken access control is up 5 spots. And what that means is passwords you use, security that you have. Broken access control is something we have to help with because we have to use strong passwords. And I'll show you some charts in a little bit on what's considered strong, what's considered weak, what's considered a good practice, and what's considered a bad practice. If you look at these, there's only 2 of those up there that programmers and developers and system builders can control. The other 8 are people related. 4 of them are the people that run the internet, misconfiguring the security control, leaving a back door open. But 4 of them we can work on. The 4 we can work on are broken access control, cryptographic failures, making sure your systems are up to date. I'll go back through this in a little more detail. This is somebody that's AT&T. They're misconfiguring stuff. Outdated components, that's probably the biggest thing that you can do for yourself, is make sure you take every single update that's offered to you. Don't delay on them. The longer you do that, the farther behind you get, and you open yourself up to vulnerabilities that the company would have fixed for you. You wouldn't be there. And then number 1 is authentication failure. That makes it difficult. And it's something we can control. Malware, you got a bunch of names. You got worms, trojans, blah, 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 blah. There's 1,000 variations. I think people sit in a little room trying to think up a new name for this new bug. What you can do to protect yourself. Let's go to that a little bit. Okay, zero trust model. It's something I've pretty much followed my whole life. I don't trust anything on the internet, never have, but I like protecting it. I love the problems and the puzzles. Zero trust model was formally defined in 2010 by John Kindervon. He worked for Forrester Research, development wing of IBM. He applied it to computer design. The idea being that I should design a computer or a cell phone so that I can leave it out in the open and it's still safe. So it's a design goal. Still not doable because we put our big computers in concrete buildings because of hurricanes. You want to protect the trunk lines that go into them. So it's just a design goal. For us, zero trust is a powerful tool. Remember that old adage, if it looks too good to be true, it is? That still applies to the internet. You get that junk mail that, hey, you won $47 million from Eastern Africa, and Mr. Tabumba wants you to have it all. Nah, it doesn't work that way. So you can protect yourself by basically looking at everything with a critical eye, making sure that it's real. For example, we'll go into some examples of phishing and scams and stuff like that in a few minutes, give you a flavor for what they are. But if you look at zero trust, here's probably the easiest way to think about it. You get an email from your bank, and it says, oh, I'm going to shut you down, or I'm going to turn your email off, or blah, 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 blah. And it's going to happen in 48 hours. Well, they're trying to get you to bite right there. I've done it. I've failed. And went, oh, maybe I'll just click on this one. Oops. If you get a message like that, just assume it's bad. Pick up the phone, call your bank, get online, log on to their website. Don't ever assume that that link in there is good. There are ways to see it, but don't ever assume that it's good. Password strength, we'll go over that in a minute. Some very good recommendations that come out over the last several years. Ways to even make you easier to remember, but also to increase the protection. Anybody using multi-factor authentication anywhere yet? Okay. Mostly with your banks and things like that, you get different stuff. Social Security that now has ID need you have to register with and prove who you are and all that type of stuff. But MFA is very powerful. In recent months, the hackers have learned to get on people's phones and intercept the MFA. So there's a little risk there, and the companies are trying to fix that. But multi-factor means something you know, password, something you have. Usually it's a cell phone, email address, something different. In a business, you got a badge on it. That's the something you have to get in the building. And then something you are, biometrics, handprints. We don't do eyes anymore because you can actually tell somebody's got a heart condition based upon reading their eyes. So eye scanners, because of HIPAA, aren't used anymore because it violates health acts. This is true, you get a kick out of that, huh? But it's quite true. It's quite true. So zero trust is something you got to keep in mind. You got to assume it's not good. You can get just as much bad stuff on your phone as you can get on computers. But if you just practice that, I'm going to second guess myself and I'm going to go to the source if I want to change something. You'll always be safer that way. Because a lot of times what they do is you click on something that takes you to a place where it's supposed to be. It's called a cross-site scripting. I'll show you 10 examples in a minute of phishing, so you can kind of get a flavor for it. And by the way, I've had an email address since 1987. I am on every mailing list on the planet. I get junk all the time. I'm going to keep it for another 2 months because I'm having fun turning people in that are sending out these scam things, and I'm getting them kicked off the internet every week. They just go pop up somewhere else with a new name, but at least I get a little satisfaction out of it. Use your protection tools. Major companies, if you have a computer, run some kind of antivirus. I don't care whether it's a free one, but just don't go bare. You gotta have some sort of protection on your machine. More valuable the information, the higher your protection should be. You know, there's tons of software out there that'll help you do that. AT&T and the big companies are building those tools into our phones and stuff now. They're starting to catch the bad stuff at the source before it gets sent out to us. So they're doing a lot. They're trying to make it better. If you got real important information, I suggest VPN, which is really just coding, so you can't read it. It'd be like taking a text message, scrambling it, sending it, and unscrambling it. That's basically what encryption is. Next thing I want to talk about is passwords. You look through this, you got a 3-character password. They can break it in seconds nowadays. If you go to 5 characters, I can still do it in a couple hours on that machine right there. That's all the power I'm going to need. Where I'd like to see people getting is in this 10 and above range for 2 reasons. One, as you can see, it takes forever to crack it. Computing power is going to get better, so you might as well start getting used to longer passwords. Now, a recommendation came out 4 years ago from the government. The best one is a 4-word phrase. I like to eat M&Ms at night, or I love to go for walks in the evening, or I went downtown. Now, is everybody getting those special character requests where you have to put like an exclamation point or an @ symbol? So you don't break up the strength of a 4-word password, I always put those characters at the front of the back, or one on each end. Part of the reason you don't want to use those is the hex codes that go with those special characters are very well known, and they're easily identified. They make the password more complicated, and if you do that with length, you'll get increased safety. Because if a hacker finds you got a 10-character password, he's going to skip you and look for the guy that's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a password, and he's going to break that one. There's no reason for him to do it any other way. Some examples: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's been around for a long time, and people still use it. Blows me away. Don't do that. It takes 20 milliseconds to figure that out, running it through a machine. This one's better, QWERTY, but still 13 hours is nothing, especially for a hacker who's got nothing else to do. You get a little better as you go longer, but this used to be a good thing to do. Replace your E's with 3's or your O's with 0. Turns out that's nowadays a very poor practice. You don't want to do that because it's easy to pick up the replacement. The number's easy to identify. 4-word phrases give computers an absolute problem. It takes forever to bust that. I'm up to 12 or 13 characters on almost every one of my passwords now. And I'm still going back through and trying to update some of the other ones. But I also find it personally, it's easier for me to do that. You know, I've got some passwords where I like to beach, boat, and fish. So I write that, or I like to go fishing, and never use the same password on different sites. If you get hacked or somebody steals it, at least you're limiting the threat to one thing. You expose one bank account password. Well, that's controllable, it's a pain. Nobody wants it, but it's manageable. There's a way for you to be able to handle that. This chart's by a company called Sandstorm. And another one is Sandbox. And these are all security firms that are trying to teach people about these types of things. Told you about special characters. Now let's get into some examples of phishing, and learn to recognize it. If you got time on your hands and you like tracking people down, all of your internet companies have an abuse email account. You find out what that is, and if you get stuff you don't like, you can send it to them, and they'll investigate it, and a lot of times they'll do something about it. If you ever get to that point, I'll have to teach you guys how to do something else in another class or something, because you got to be able to send them the header. What happens in email is every time it jumps from one machine to the next, it gets a new header. So if you know you got a bad email, without that header, they can't track it down. So you have to learn to extract that, because when you forward it, it's gone. Okay? Just sort of an aside. This is a fake notification. And things I notice are, see how it's from CO and CN? Those are foreign countries. Our stuff's .coms, and there's actually a place you can go look up every extension. If it's out of the country, I don't even pay attention to it. And what they're basically trying to do is to get you to go to that HTML. It's going to either put bug on your machine, or it's going to take you to a bad website, and they're going to ask you for personal information. As soon as you see that, get rid of it and just delete it. Anything important comes in the mail. Anything from the government, anything really detailed from your banks, that stuff gets mailed to us because of the way our laws work. So just assume it's bad. Netflix is another one that's getting out there real now. It's from Info Confirm. It's not even from the company Netflix. That should be a flag to you right away. This link right here doesn't take you to Netflix. It takes you to another place. You know how when you take your mouse and you slide over the little blue highlighted underline thing, and it expands and shows you where the real link is? You can look on that, and if it doesn't match who it's from, assume it's bad. Just delete it. If it's really important, they will. If somebody's tracking you down for money, they will find you. You know, it may take them a while, but they'll find you. This one, this is a new scam that's out, and I get about 8 of these a day. It says I have this voicemail, or I have this voicemail, I gotta go to this website and look at it. It's bad. It's gonna take you to that place. It's either gonna run something on your machine, or it's gonna try to extract information. Keys are, just don't believe it. This voicemail scam is all over the place. It's happening rapidly, and it's brand new. This one, they're trying to create a sense of urgency. You have all this debt, oh man, you got to react, or the police are going to come after you, we're going to take all your stuff away. BS. Delete it and move on. Don't click and talk about that. If you get something like that, again, the rule, go to the source. You call your bank, or you visit your bank, or you do your banking online, always go to the source. Assume that somebody's trying to teach you out of it. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is, because there's a lot of bad actors out of there. This one, if you look at the top where it says Pentagon, blah, 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 .cl, well, that's them trying to make you think it's really the Pentagon. Pentagon has a site similar to that, but it doesn't have that dash in the, and the foreign country. We wouldn't have our Pentagon on foreign countries' computers. They're all housed here. So you assume that's bad. American Express, a lot of times they'll misspell one letter in the company's name, things like that, so they can say they're not really illegal, they're just trying to cheat you. Oops. I wonder what happened to that one. Or maybe I left a blank page. This one, AT&T. Right at the end where it says att-mail.com, that's somebody trying to make you think it's AT&T, but AT&T's real website doesn't look that way. It just says att.com. So they're trying to get your mind to trick you. Again, that's nothing to do with AT&T, right? That tells you right away that it's probably fake, just because it has nothing to do with AT&T. Here's the other. This is probably the most popular one out there right now, is these fake voicemails. It is a total scam across the board, and just ignore them. Somebody really wants to get a hold of you, they're going to mail you a letter, they're going to leave you some voicemail. I mean, I don't even answer my phone anymore unless you're in my contact list. Because if you're not going to leave me a message, I don't need to respond to you. Usually what the robocalls, sell you this, sell you that, I want you to buy this. No, I don't want to do that. So just ignore it. And then if you're in the business, you get these all the time. Because of the internet trying to protect itself, we're having to police ourselves. And to get a certified safe website, you have to go through this validation by a world and a national organization. Then they give you this thing called the SSL Certificate. You know when you're on your browser and that little lock shows up? If the lock's there, that means that site is validated, secure, and real. But you can't always assume that, especially if you clicked on something. If you went to their website and you see the lock, I'm pretty safe with that. Very safe with that. Doesn't bother me one bit. And then Google's got one chasing them right now. Anything I get from Gmail that has to do with the corporation, I assume right away is bad. Gmail is one of the most abused by the bad actors that we talked about in the threat. They're terrible. Here's that, oh, you just got $47 million in here, whoa! No, you didn't. You know, so that should be an immediate, I mean, you guys get stuff like this, don't you? Yeah, and most of you probably delete it, don't you? Good for you. This one. The names and stuff don't match with where it's supposed to be from. Those are all triggers and keys and suspect. And my favorite two are when I know I got that, like I got PayPal account, I get a PayPal scan email. Well, I don't hardly ever use PayPal. Then my favorite one are, your services are going to expire, and you don't even have that service. I don't even have that card. You know, so just delete that stuff. They'll put what's called a payload in an attachment and try to get you infected by just getting you to click on the thing. And you may not even know it. Some of it's pretty sophisticated. And most of you have probably never been hacked. That's probably, yeah, I said most of you. I've been hacked before. I've made the mistakes. And, you know, we all live and learn a little bit. With that, sort of thinking towards how to wrap it up, the zero trust model, strong passwords, some kind of antivirus, anti-malware, some kind of protection. And if you're not getting it through your cell phone providers, call them up and ask them why not. And if you feel like you're getting bugged too much, change providers. There's a lot of them out there that are doing a really good job about that kind of thing. Now with that, does anybody have any general questions or some things I haven't answered? Okay, how do we do this? Okay, Bob.
When you get an email, where you go, Bob? What's your favorite antivirus?
There you go.
My favorite one? I've used quite a few of them.